Hello and welcome to the discussion of the May 2018 Management Case Study Pre-C. My name is Hashan Madushanka and I'm the founder and lead tutor for LCI Academy, formerly known as Study CIMA. I have experience in coaching OCS and MCS in all the sessions since 2015, and I have coached more than thousands of students globally and have produced a range of prize winners for OCS and MCS. I still continue to coach students globally and also develop study material as well as evaluate student answers. So that's a little bit about myself. Now, before we start discussing the pre-scene, I would like to mention a few points. Unlike other analysis videos, I am not going to type out any points while discussing. I will only be highlighting the important terms. So before we proceed, I would request you to pause this video, get yourself a copy of the pre-scene, ideally a hard copy, and also keep a notepad next to you. So whenever I explain about an important point, I want you to make your own note. I want you to pause the video and make your own note, so that way you will be understanding it much better rather than simply reading through the points that I would have made, right? So I believe that technique to be much more effective than me simply making notes on the face of the pre-scene. So I would like you to pause this video right now and get yourself a hard copy as well as a notepad next to you. Right, so I believe that you have the two things I mentioned to you, the hard copy of the pre-scene and the notepad. Alright then, so let's proceed. So we have a company named Menta. So let's see what this company is all about. The logo does not give an indication of the industry. So let's go down. You have the contents. So it's a 23 to 25 page pre-scene, which is normally the amount of pages that you find in a typical CIMA MCS pre-scene. Right, so we have an introduction. Menta is a leading multinational public transportation group employing more than 35,000 people worldwide. Right, so that gives us the industry that we are going to deal with for this session. It's on public transport, which is of course an industry that is familiar to most of us, because most of us would have used public transportation, right, or still continue to use public transportation. So we are well aware about how the process works, and also as customers what we expect from such a company, right? So since we have the idea as customers as to what we expect from the company, this would give us or allow us to give better points, for example in terms of customer service or what the company needs to do in order to satisfy its customers, right? Now, a couple of key points that I highlighted here. The first term here says leading. So we seem to be a large player in the market where we might have a considerable market share, and also we are quite dominant, which means we can put pressure on our competitors, and chances are that competitors might be following certain strategies that we implement. Okay, and another thing we need to remember, sometimes we may tend to get complacent since we are leading. That should not happen. We should continue to be dominant and try to increase our market share more and more. Then the next keyword here is multinational. So it's not just based on the country that they are originated, which is of course written or given over here, Centralia. So we are also operating in other countries, which means we are exposed to international risk and also exchange rates, right? So whatever country that we are entering into, well, the political situation must be assessed, and we should have a close rapport with the government, because public transport is generally an industry or a sector of the economy that is regulated, or at least the government will have a close eye on it, because it's an essential service to the citizens of the country. And before we go into a country, we should also, analyze the country's conditions. We could use something like the Porter's diamond theory, which is a part of your E2. And also, there's a good chance that we might be having subsidiaries in other countries, which means F2 foreign subsidiary section will be applicable, or you might have questions based on that. Right, so public transportation. So this is an industry that has so many different perspectives to talk about. Right, so if I start off with a key model in your syllabus, which is the balanced scorecard, we know that there are 4 perspectives: learning and growth, internal business processes, customer, and of course financial perspective. So looking at learning and growth, we could be linking this to the different routes that we operate in, right? The number of different routes that we are looking at. And when I say routes, I'm including both within the country as well as in other countries. Then internal business processes. Some of the critical success factors in this industry is that buses arrive on time and buses are in good condition, right? And the speed at which the bus completes the route, right? So sometimes the bus tends to travel too slowly, which means the people traveling in the bus, especially the commuters, may not be able to get to work on time, right? And the conditions of the bus would be very important. The safety, right? Sometimes the opposite might happen. Now, some buses may travel very slowly, but some buses may travel at very high speeds just to complete their due route within the due time. So that might pose a danger on the safety of people traveling in the bus. Then looking at the customer perspective, again some of the points that I mentioned earlier: the conditions of the bus, how satisfied are the customers, how many, or would they be willing to travel in this service again or in this particular route again. And finally, the financial perspective, which is looking at the ratios such as the operating profit margins, the return on investment, and also going to a broader perspective, if this is a listed company, which there's a good chance, then of course the share price and other perspectives or other aspects will be relevant. So the term group also is a key word here, because group is something that is important for our F2, because we prepare group consolidated statements. So there's a good chance that Menta has subsidiaries both within the country and outside the country. So there are many subtopics in the consolidation you need to be aware about, such as step acquisitions, step disposals, or then also we are looking at complex group structures, right? So all of these need to be revised before you face your exam. Now they have more than 35,000 people worldwide, so this is a significant amount of employees. I'm guessing most of these employees would be, say, the bus drivers and the people doing the maintenance work. So this should also remind you of the importance of HR related aspects from E2. We know that there's a chapter or two dedicated for HR related aspects, such as safety, health and safety in the workplace, diversity, equality, and all of that. So those are things you need to brush up your knowledge. Now, having 35,000 people worldwide, the HR, the management of these people should also be done carefully, because you need to properly give them targets, and the appraisal process should go on smoothly. The reward schemes, right, all of that should be managed properly. Right, so it goes on to say that the company offers both local and long distance or intercity bus services in severally developed and developing countries. Right, so local and long distance. So local would be, of course, short distance, which would be less costly as a total, and long distance the cost will be higher due to a higher fuel expense and also a higher amount being charged for or being absorbed for the driver. Maybe they have a couple of drivers, that's the general norm, because it would be quite tiring for one person to drive, say, let's say for example 400-500 kilometers at a stretch. So generally you might have, say, a couple of people in the bus. Now this would also be important because you have to set a proper price for this. Now in certain countries the price or the bus fare would be regulated by the government. Now even if the industry is deregulated, there might be certain restrictions imposed by the government or maybe local authorities in terms of bus fares, because it's an essential service, as I mentioned. So the costing should be done properly in order to understand whether the bus fare that is being charged is covering the cost and making a positive contribution or maybe a profit. Right? If not, they should revise the charge if they have a scope of doing that, or if they have the freedom to do that. Now they are operating in several developed and developing countries. Now when you want to set up in a country, as I mentioned earlier, the relationship with the government should be carefully managed, because there's a good chance that the government plays a crucial role in the approval process for the bus routes, the licenses and so on. And also they need to look at how tough the competition is, right? So certain countries, they have well established transportation companies. So if Menta wants to move into a country like that, they need to give a tough game or compete heavily in certain factors in order to build a name in the market and also penetrate into the market. So competitor analysis is extremely important, right? They need to have a proper idea about the competitor strategy. They need to keep a close eye on the developments and the assumptions made by competitors and so on. Also the improvement in technology and different types of vehicles coming out, like the different models of buses that may be developed, right? So we know that there's a recent trend of most governments not being very fond of diesel, right? Because diesel causes a lot of pollution, even more than petrol, and governments are encouraging companies to stick to clean energy or stick to electric vehicles, right? So those are also things that Menta need to be aware about, being a large company. So Menta was founded in Centralia in the 1980s. So Centralia is the country that they are based in, and the company is roughly around 35 to 40 years old since it started in the 1980s. So that is quite a long time, right? So more than 3 decades. So within this time period, they would have seen a lot of changes in the industry, right? The road development has increased rapidly. Their fleet of buses might have increased, right? So we have more information about the company history later on. Menta's worldwide operations are organized into 3 geographical regions. Central Eurozone, within Europe, Western International, so possibly America, and Eastern International, which could possibly be towards Asia. So they are covering 3 major regions in the world. Menta's head office is in Centralia, which is a country in Central Eurozone. Okay, so they are currently based in Central Eurozone. 70% of Menta's revenues are earned in Centralia. The currency is the C dollar. Right. So when moving into these regions, there are certain restrictions that might be imposed by authorities. So Menta needs to be aware of them and work their way around these. Now head office, now looking at the structure of the company, so they are operating in 3 geographical regions, so possibly they might be maintaining a divisional structure, right? So divisional structure is generally based on the products or geographic based. So in this case it's clearly seems to be a geographic based structure, but nevertheless you might have the functional heads in the head office, and possibly there might be functional heads for each geographical region, right? So that is generally how the divisional structure works. Now that would be appropriate for this business model, since conditions from one region to another can change drastically, and you can't implement the same strategy for all the regions, right? So that would possibly be a failure. So the management team of each region will have better knowledge rather than general knowledge about all 3 regions, right? So specialized knowledge in a region might be more appropriate. And mind you, we are not talking about a small town or a small city. We are talking about, say, a whole continent, right? So Central Eurozone, that sounds like a major part of Europe. Western International, possibly America. Eastern International, some countries from Asia possibly. So we are looking at a large geographical area. Now, Menta's head office is in Centralia. So generally the financial statements of the company may be presented in the C dollar. So when looking at foreign exchange translations, there might be adjustments that are required. So since they operate in so many different countries, foreign exchange transactions, there might be gain or losses reported. So you need to know the accounting entries for these, right? And 70% are earned in the home country. So that is their main market. We are not sure as to how big this country is. Now, of course, keep in mind that we are looking at a fictitious country, right? Often students make the mistake of trying to do extensive research and trying to find out what this country is in the real world. Please bear in mind that the examiner may not necessarily use information from an actual country. This might be a totally made up country, and even if it was an actual country, I really doubt whether it will give you any upper hand in your exam. So my advice as an experienced case study tutor is to stop worrying about what this actual country is, and stop doing guesswork. Just go along with the information given to you in the pre-scene, right? That will save your time, and that will you will be using your time for the most productive things, right? So C dollar is their currency. Now we need to have an idea about the different fluctuations, although you are not extensively tested on this, right? The only real test might be for foreign exchange translations and transactions. Now 70% of the revenues being earned in Centralia would generally give us an indication that Menta is a large producer or large company, a large player in the Centralia market, right? As we go along, we know exactly where they stand. In the next few pages in the pre-scene, we have an idea about that, but for now, just keep in mind that they are a large company in the country, in Centralia. Right, so you are a financial manager in Menta's head office in Centralia. Your specific role is associated with the Central Eurozone region, although you often liaise with colleagues in other regions. Your primary responsibilities are associated with management accounting. So nothing out of the ordinary with regards to your job position. Financial manager is the general position that is being aligned with the management case study. So just discussing a little about your job role. So when you step from operational case study to management case study, if you look at the syllabus contents for example, if you take E2, now E1 was more about specialized knowledge with regards to marketing, operations, and so on. But when you step into E2, you would understand the fact that you have information covering about things like human aspect of the organization, relationship and project management, right? So those are more advanced in terms of the organization hierarchy, because as a manager you have a crucial role in balancing between the operational level and the strategic level. So it's very important for you to get an idea about how to manage the human aspect, right? How to tackle emotional situations and so on. And project management is definitely an integral part, because the top management may give all the orders, but you're the one who's responsible for making sure the operational level people get the job done. So project management is extremely important. And looking at the P2 areas, if you take a very important area, which is investment appraisal. So here we are looking at a long-term investment, whether or not we should spend our money on it. And of course, it's taking a long-term approach, say 3 to 5 years sometimes, or it can even be more. So that's a part of long-term decision making. Then also management of responsibility centers, right? Divisional performance measurement, and also non-financial performance measurement using balanced scorecard. Then looking at F2, you have how to come up or how to decide the source of finance. Now, sources of finance of F2 closely related to investment appraisal in P2, because you need the money to make the investment and you have various sources. Then in terms of accounting standards also, you have things like share-based payments, leases, and consolidation part will be more advanced. So you don't see, as a financial manager, you are not required to get the entries sorted. You simply have to give advice to your lower level employees for certain transactions that they are not aware about, right? So guys, although the position is called financial manager, just bear in mind that you're not into hardcore finance and management accounting. You're more like an all-rounder that is responsible for, or that is involved in all the different aspects, like HR, operations management, communication, and so on. So you have a 360-degree role in your company, and although you're based in the head office, as the pre-scene says, you have to liaise with colleagues from other regions as well. So the bottom line here is you cannot skip any of the syllabus areas from your 3 subjects. Now, true enough that P2 is your main trigger, but then again, you get a considerable amount of questions from the other 2 subjects as well, and you'll never know the area that you will be tested on. So it is important for you to be prepared for all the different syllabus areas, right? So that way you won't risk the chance of not being able to answer a particular area. So please make sure that you are thorough with all the contents in the syllabus of all 3 subjects before you face the exam. Right, so that is the introduction. Now moving on to the next page about bus regulation and state ownership. Public transport raises critical issues for governments, right? So that is mainly because public transport is used by a majority of citizens and it is an essential service. So we know that sometimes public transport goes on strike in certain countries, and this would have a very strong knock-on impact on the other industries, because ultimately people have to get to work for the economy to keep running. So if that part is hindered, then it will definitely have a wide impact on the economy, or the state or the regional economy in the worst case. So this is the reason why public transport is generally regulated in most countries, right? Because governments can't risk the chance of this going down, at least temporarily. Okay, so as it says, many people rely on buses and trains for travel. Also, an efficient and attractive public transport service encourages car owners to make some journeys by bus or train with reductions in road congestion and pollution. So, looking at the critical success factors of the industry, uh, efficient and attractive public transport service. So, the result of this would be to reduce road congestion by discouraging people to use their own transport and rather stick to public transport, and of course pollution, because lower the amount of vehicles, uh, lower the amount of carbon emissions that would be released, right? So in order for this to happen, the public transport service should be efficient and attractive, as it says. So attractive would be in terms of the seating facilities and how the bus looks like, right? And efficiency of course relates to the speed at which, or the reliability, how frequently do buses arrive, right? So if you have to wait for more than 1 hour for the next bus, then you will get frustrated, obviously, right? So these are things that will play a crucial role in the success of any company in this industry. Many countries, including Centralia, used a combination of state ownership and regulation to ensure that public transport was efficient and reliable. Now, state regulated industries, well, we generally associate them with being inefficient, but the reason that they are under the state regulation is because it's an essential service. So, a combination of regulation and privately managed mechanism would generally be ideal, as most economists mention. For many years, most of Centralia's large bus operators were owned by government agencies. They aimed to make profits, but they also continued to cover unprofitable routes, such as unprofitable routes as a public service. Right. So not every part of a country would be viable for a bus operator, because in certain parts of the country you don't find many people, right? A lot of bare land and un, uh, uninhabited areas. So in these routes, the amount of people that are using the transport might be less, and it may not be economical to run many turns for a day, right? So although there are few people in this area, it's important that these people have some sort of a method to travel from one place to the other, right? These are generally rural areas. So sometimes the government would have to sacrifice profits and make sure transport is available so that the needs of these people are not compromised. Now the problem is generally when you have private sector operating, private sector may not concern much about this being essential for those people, because the main objective may be to maximize profits. And if it was fully privatized and deregulated, there's a good chance that no one would operate buses in these areas. So the people in these areas would face a lot of trouble. The other way in which bus services were protected was through the law that required operators to seek route licenses for each route that they plan to operate, right? So this is they have to pay a fee to the government. Maybe it's a monthly fee or annual fee. This reduced competition between bus operators, making it potentially more profitable to operate routes that might not have had large passenger numbers. So when everyone tries to move into the routes with large passenger numbers, there would be untapped potential in the ones without large passenger numbers, and maybe the route license cost for such areas was much low, right? In 1980s, there was a global shift away from state ownership and regulation. Centralia gradually reduced the restrictions on offering bus services, although this is still a heavily regulated industry. So comparatively, the restrictions have reduced, but nevertheless, they still have strict, or these still seem to have strict laws and regulations governing the industry. Bus companies are now encouraged to operate unpopular routes through a system of government subsidies. For example, a local bus company might receive a grant to operate a regular service between a rural area and the nearest town center, even though the fare income is insufficient to make the route commercially viable. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, if it was purely deregulated and no involvement of the government, there's a good chance that private operators would not have buses in areas with few people. So as a remedy for that, the government has decided to give them a subsidies or a grant so that their losses will be minimized and possibly they would make a small profit by running these routes. Okay, so this is a good idea, or this is a good solution rather from the government, because the government cannot compromise the needs of even a small group of people, because every citizen has the right for these essential services, okay, irrespective of the tax that they pay and the status that they are in. They deserve to enjoy public services like health, transport, education, and so on. The 1980s also saw the sale of many large state-owned bus companies, including Centralias. This released cash for the purpose but also left the government dependent on commercial bus operators to ensure an adequate public transport system. Now, although the government is dependent, we need to keep in mind who's the boss. The government is the boss, and the government can control to a certain extent the things that happen in a private company, because if they are going out of their way, going a little or drifting off the track and exploiting certain customers, then the government has the right to step in and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong and this is what we want you to do now, right? So don't think that deregulation means giving complete freedom, right? It's not, but it seems like this is a good government policy, because they seem to encourage companies to step into the industry and also take up unprofitable routes. So this is exactly how the relationship should keep going between the private sector and the government. Now we saw that this company was established in 1980s, right, as we see here in the 1980s, and the statement here states that the 1980s saw the sale of many large state-owned bus companies. So maybe this was the reason as to why Menta was encouraged to step into this industry. And when they sell these state-owned bus companies, there's a good chance that they would have sold the buses for a reduced price, right? The scrap value might have been much lower than the market value possibly. So this may have been a good opportunity for the companies in the industry to purchase these buses and so on at a low cost, at a discount, and that would of course minimize their capital investment. Right, so this seems to be a very interesting case, and there are so many more things that we should discuss. We have only looked at 2 pages so far. So this brings to an end of the first part of our pre-scene video analysis. Now, if you want to get your hands on the remaining videos, well, you definitely can by going into our website, lciacademy.co.uk. That's www.lciacademy.co.uk. Now, I will include a link at the bottom of the video for you to easily go to our website and get hold of the remaining videos. And also we offer free study resources for MCS as well as OCS. So once you enter our website, you can subscribe to our free study resources. And also we have our Facebook group as well as a WhatsApp group, which you can join if you are interested. It's a study forum where we discuss so many things, and there will be our team of tutors will also be a part of this. So whenever you have a query, we will quickly respond to it. I am a part of it myself, right? So you can check that all out. I have included all the details at the bottom. And also we offer study packages for students globally, right? So we have three main study packages, which is the bronze package, silver, and of course the gold package, right? So your investment is also included in the website, so you can invest in one of our packages and guarantee your success at your management case study exam. We have been doing this for a very long time and we have produced exceptional results. So you can check all the details from our website. And if there is any query that any questions and doubts that I can help you with, please do not hesitate to contact me through our Facebook group, or you can just include comments over here in this video. So with that being said, I wish you all the very best at your exam, and I hope all of you pass the exam this time. Good luck.